I think I'll start because we're going to talk about the most interesting topic ever. Cracking passwords. But it's a little bit time pressured, so I think we should get going. I'm just quickly going to introduce myself. It's not the most interesting thing in here, but my name is Niclas Kjellin. I work for a company called Retune Cybersecurity. But apart from that, I'm a little bit of a password geek. I love everything about passwords, how they work, how they don't work, what we use them for, don't use them for, and so on. So I've done a lot of research on passwords, and some of that is part of this presentation. It's also some experience that I have of helping companies to recreate lost passwords in different embarrassing situations. But we need to get cracking, so to speak. We're going to start at the modern classic. And you all seen this. You all know what it is. You've been sitting there struggling with it. I'm not going to present it here the way you usually see it. I'm going to present it in the way that some of you may be thinking when you see it. So it goes a little bit like this. Think of an 8-character long word, capitalize the first character, add a digit at the end, and finish with a special character, also known as any of these 5. What we're going to do now is we're going to see what happens when we add modern hardware to that. So I have this assistant with me. Looks a little bit better than me, all shiny. So I need to jump over to this side. Some of you may... Okay, sorry. This is... I need to do this. Ill-prepared. I had like half an hour to prepare for this. This site here collects passwords for this particular purpose, I must say. What it does, it takes passwords and converts it into something called a password hash. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more in a bit. It may. It's not the most important thing. We just need to enter a few passwords here. So any idea of a good password? It needs to be 8 characters long. That's the only... Exactly. But for this exercise, it needs to be 8 characters long. Any idea of a good password that is 8 characters long? Password, I think we skipped that one. We could do summer, for example. That's a classic one. We do need a little bit of different types of characters here. And why not start with, let's say, I don't know, one of those. That's a great password. It failed because it was one too short. Let's just add one of those at the end. Okay. So we can do, this is actually difficult to do it on that screen, but we'll see. Let's do one more. Øredev. Yes, why not? Let's not start with a capital. We could do an O there, so it becomes internationalized. I'm just ad-libbing here a little bit. We can make it like that. That's say Øredev. Just imagine that. But that could potentially be a password. 3 of those 2. We're going to see the result later on. There are more passwords in there. Some of you may have actually submitted one. This URL is in the link. But you don't have to go and do that now if you don't want to. It's going to be locked in like a little while. I can't find my cursor. There you go. So this is just an SSH connection to this machine here right now, so I can just tell it to do something. So I'm just going to start that, and I'm going to explain that. We need to... That's more like it. So I'll start that. And now downloads those passwords and starts trying to do something with them. These are off-the-shelf graphic cards. Anyone can buy these. It may not look like a normal computer, but it's a normal computer. It's actually the wet dream of any teenager. And it runs something called Hashcat. Hashcat is an open source free software that kind of utilizes the raw power of these machines here, or these cards here, to try to crack password as quick as possible. So it's actually warming up. I don't know if you hear, but it's the fans has started to spin up. I'll just see the status of this one. There's actually 26 passwords, so you've been quite good. 11 is already cracked. I don't know how long you've been running, just 10, 15, 20 seconds, something. We'll get back to that. Passwords is a bit like a tango. It does require two parts for it to work. And what are those two parts? Well, it's basically you, and it is reality. And reality is that we have passwords all over the place. We have so many accounts, they are everywhere. And it takes almost 300 days for a company to realize they've been breached, on average. On top of that, it takes another 80 days on average for them to actually figure out what happened and maybe notify that you should change your password. So it could take a year until you know that your password has been leaked, if you ever get to know that. There's also an underground market. So people are trading passwords, selling passwords. So on your side, what do you have then? Well, you can hide among numbers. You can hide among the 8 billion people on this planet and hope for the best. You have one more thing, a little special thing. That is that we're all purpose-built to figure out, come up with, remember, and handle really complex passwords. Or maybe it was the opposite. I get unsure now. This table here shows the top 5 passwords that people use over the past 3 years from 2022. As you can see, there's not that much difference between these, kind of the same. And if we were looking even further back in history, it will look the same. And if I were to guess about the future, it's going to look like this. Because we are really bad at using passwords, coming up with them and handling them. And the root cause of that is this. Now this just happens to be a chimpanzee brain, but pretty much the same anyway. Our brains are not built to handle passwords. In the same way that some of us don't remember people's names, or faces, or the birth dates of our loved ones, or that very important wedding anniversary date. Passwords and our brains don't work together. There was a study made in 2012 where they looked at how we can cope with different amounts of passwords. And they came to a lot of different conclusions. One of them was this. If we're given 7 to 9 passwords, 84% of the people that was involved in that study had troubles with that. Basically, forgetting them, typing them in wrongly, having to reset them, call support, and so on. That's a pretty old study, 10 plus years or so. But I can promise you that evolution works a little bit slower than that. So the brains we had back then is exactly the same brains we have today. And that's our problem. Reality then. Well, in reality, 721.5 million credentials, that's a username and password, leaked last year. Quite many. The interesting fact with those is that 72% of those passwords already leaked before. So we're good at one thing, and that's reusing passwords. Good or bad, I don't know. There are 24.6 billion credentials available for sale right now in some dark web marketplace. 6.7 billion of those are deemed to be unique. So that's a unique combination of a username and a password. So we go back to that hiding among numbers. We need to fudge that 8 billion people a little bit, because there are a few children that may not be old enough, and there is actually a group of people that do not have internet access. So let's say we remove 1.5 billion. That means that in this room right now, there is at least one full credential available for every person in here. Please stay. I'm going to teach you what you should change it to. First, I'm going to teach you what not to change it to. Because it turns out that 1 in 200 passwords is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So please don't use that. It's bad, promise you. Where do these passwords come from? They're parts of leaks. Some hackers, some person get access to a system they should not have access to. And they may pull down a database full with data, with lots of different things in it, perhaps, but there could be username and passwords in there. And they clean that up a little bit, and they end up with pairs like this. So the white text here is a username, just happens to be an email address. And the orange text is a password hash. And a password hash is how you normally and should store a password. It's how we protect them. It's a one-way encryption method. So we take something, we encrypt it, and once it's encrypted, we can't get it back. That's the mathematical hurdle we need to get past when we try to crack passwords. So I lined up these passwords here, giving them some random names and profiles. Yes, it's going to be easy to follow. I have admin, Elliot, Edward, and Tyrell. How do we crack passwords? Well, first thing we can try is to use a very special talent. We start with going to the net, online. We may go to a site like this. This is CrackStation. There are many sites like this. This is one of the bigger ones. Behind this site, there is a database full of pre-computed password hashes and their counterparts. So we take this special talent that we have, and we do copy-paste. And we get a result. We submit it to get a result. This is zoomed in a little bit here, and the green line here shows that we already cracked one password. It says, let me in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It took mere seconds to crack admin's password. Actually, the most difficult part with this was this reCAPTCHA you see in the back there, where you have to prove you're not a robot, and you have to select all the pictures of bikes and things. It took me probably like 5 tries. So we have actually cracked one of the password by just going to the net and copy-pasting. No skills required whatsoever. Moving on to the other passwords, we're going to have to go in a little bit more classic password cracking. But again, we head out to the internet because we're going to do something called the dictionary attack. And for that, we need a list of words. In the back, you see here is a GitHub page of a friendly soul that has published any number of these lists of different purposes. There's common passwords, there are Bible names, there's anything. And there's so many out there you can use. They tend to look a little bit like this. And we could use these straight off, and we'll use a help like this. It goes quicker, but we can run it on a desktop machine as well. Doesn't matter, it just goes quicker with that. But if we use this straight off, we don't get very good results. So we apply a rule set to them. We take each word and we modify it slightly. We create mutations from it. And that could look a little bit like this. If we take password, it could turn password into password with a capital P, followed by a 1 and an exclamation mark, and so on and so on and so on. Any number of variations. We do that with a whole list, and we have millions and millions of potential password variations. If you've already seen your password, it's okay, you change it now. If we run this, and we may end up at this word, which just happens to be a name, Angela. Angela with an A. #2. Now, of course, this is not where we're comparing what we're trying to crack with, so we have to turn it into one of these password hashes and compare those. And when we do that, we realize that this is Eliot's password. And what I can't really understand here is how he can look so surprised, because it is a really bad password and it just took seconds to crack. But nevertheless, that's his password. So now we cracked 50% of the password by just picking stuff off the net and applying a certain tools that we may have and crack those passwords. Now, we do understand that passwords are personal in many cases. We tend to use bits and pieces that are familiar to us or dear to us or something like that. And that's how we're going to crack the other passwords here. So if we look at Edward, Edward has done a mistake because he's using something that is very familiar to him and uses everywhere. But he's done another mistake, because when you crack password, you usually only have 2 items to work off. It's a password hash, which doesn't give you anything because that's what you're trying to crack. And you have a username. And in this case, this is basically Edward's password. Sorry, not password, username. And 1949, most likely the year he was born. Mr. Robot could be just the phrase that he likes and uses as his email address. And it turns out that a lot of people do this mistake. They use something that they also use in usernames. So if we add this a little dynamically to our little password cracking exercise, we may end up at this password. And you're going like, that looks nothing like his username. But it's actually Mr. Robot backwards, with a few carefully replaced characters, starting with an exclamation mark. So it's kind of a good password, but it was hidden in plain sight. Don't do this. This is a cardinal sin when creating password. It's actually giving the hint, even if you don't know it or not, in your username. I've seen this a couple of times. But we have Tyrell. Tyrell has something in his eyes. You can see that. Could be some sort of security awareness, look. Could also be just pure madness, because they're pretty much the same. Really difficult to tell them apart. So what we're going to do when we try to crack Tyrell's password, I'm going to introduce to you now a customized tool that is used to crack passwords, or at least help out. And this is a world first. It's called Google. Anyone heard about it? It actually searches stuff. It's great. So we type in his name there, and we click submit. And of course, we get a lot of information potentially about this person. Some more, some others a little bit less. And we may have finding a site with even more information. And yes, we don't all have wiki sites. But we tend to publish a lot of personal information on many of the social media sites we use. We also tend to use a lot of personal information in our passwords. It's a great combination if you're looking at it from my perspective. A little bit worse for your perspective. So by just doing a little bit of search, we can find a lot of different things. We can see where he's born, what year and date he was born. We can see that he has a Danish wife called Johanna Olofsson. We pick all these bits and pieces. And why are we doing this on an individual? Most of the time we would have stopped at 75% of the password. That's a great result. But this guy works at a company called eCorp, and he happens to be a CTO there. So he's the big fish. So we may want to spend a little bit more time trying to crack his password. So we'll look for things at the eCorp site as well, just to find out the information. And one thing catches our attention. There's a little slogan here. It says, "Together we can change the world." There is a teaching that some of you might have seen, how to create good passwords that are easy to remember from long sentences. And we know this, we all know this, so we've seen this. So, for example, it could be that you take the first character in every word, and that turns into this. So we just grab that, we put that into our personal dictionary for Tyrell. And then we run this in a similar way that we did before. And we use a rule set, of course. That rule set can include that we actually combine different items here. And we may end up at this password, which is basically that abbreviated long sentence, but with 7s instead of T's, added at eCorp. So we now cracked all the passwords. What are we going to do with them? Of course, we could try to use them at the site that they leaked from. But most likely that is not possible because they could have been changed there. So we need to figure out where these people have accounts in other places. So we remove admin because it's not interesting. Sorry, we don't. But we are still going to find out where these people have accounts, because we want to make money. That's what the game is about. And we just can go online and we can try them out, and we can do this automatically. We can figure out 100, 200, 300 services in a very short period of time, build a list, and see what works. We may end up at a random site like this. I don't know if you've seen it before. What do you think I could earn from this gentleman's Netflix account if I sold it in the market on the dark web? That he got a little bit worried there. I saw that. That's the denial he's going there. I don't have it because you don't have an account, so it's a safe bet. But seriously, how much do you think you can earn from selling a Netflix account? Any ideas? Sorry? $5. It's a very good guess. It's actually $4. You could probably get $5 as well. And that's a lifetime account, assuming that that person keeps on paying Netflix and don't change their password. If they do, you can just buy another one. It's still cheaper. I also find it surprising that people are continuously asking me what I make my money from. But there are other sites that are a little bit more worse for companies when people get access to them who shouldn't. If you don't know what Kaseya is, they are the reason why a supermarket chain called Coop in Sweden couldn't sell a single item in most of their stores for about a week a couple of years ago. If you get access to any of these, you could probably do a lot of things. Just last week, the Norwegian television company, they announced that they were tricked into paying 80,000 euros to a scammer. And that scammer used a real account for an employee from a leaked password. Why do you want to do this except, scamming? You may want to get the information and so on out from this. But the real reason is this. The easiest way to earn money. Encrypt the files, demand a ransom, and hope they pay. But I know what you're thinking right now. It wouldn't happen to you because you don't reuse your passwords. Or? Anyone admit they're reusing their passwords? There's one there? No? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Deniability as well. This is where I remove admin because admin is not interesting. We need to figure out what other passwords do these people have? Because we all know this. No one reuses their password. We all learn that. So does crackers. Those trying to hack into your account. So the only thing we have to go on is the password itself. So if we take the first password, Angela #2, could the 2 mean something? I know you're all guilty of this. It could be a counter. It's a second version of the password. Maybe he's using these passwords somewhere else. Let's try them. The end there, he gone a little bit berserk, but it still says Angela in one way or another. Edward, he's stuck on his favorite phrase. He uses it everywhere. So you may have these passwords somewhere else. We just try them. Doesn't cost us anything. Tyrell do actually have the worst password of them all. I've seen this a couple of times in real life. And every time I see this pattern, I know exactly what kind of password that person uses somewhere else. Because they look like this. At Amazon, at Apple, at PayPal, at Google, and so on. So he basically has a 6-character long password and then just adds where he's at. And this is directly from real live examples. Okay, so we're going to turn to the main star of the show. This screenshot here is it running a benchmark. I'm just going to highlight the number there. It says 1013.0 GH/S. What does that mean? It means this: 1013 billion password guesses every single second. So if you're running a counter on your password, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or change a simple special character, this machine has guessed that already before I even started that sentence. Now this is a portable set-ish. If you were to run this in a professional environment, you would have twice as many. So we're actually talking about 2,000 billion guesses every single second. It's just so many guesses, it's just difficult to take in. And we're gonna take that number with us a little bit to the next slide to give it the context. So we take an 8-character long password. This number here represents all the combinations you could think of with 8 characters. All of them. This is 6 followed by 15 digits. It's a very big number. I don't even know what it's called, but it's very big. Now the interesting fact here is that companies try to help their users into creating stronger passwords. So they give you a password policy and say you need to follow this. What happens with an 8-character password when you get the password policy? You're limited to your choice to this number instead. A 2 followed by 15 digits. Still bigger, but it's 42% of your original potential choices. So if I know that your company using a password policy, why would I try to crack it by looking in those that are not relevant? It's halved my time to crack your password. It'll take about 10 minutes to crack that password on a Windows machine, the Windows password on your machine, using one of these with 8 graphic cards. It doesn't scale very well though, because 9 characters long passwords take about 20 hours, and a 12 character long password takes 2,600 years. Not something I would attempt. But it gets worse. This is the 32 special characters that you could potentially use in a password normally. I've done a lot of analysis of passwords. I started off with 5.5 billion unique real password length 8 to 12. Did a lot of analysis on those. I extracted all that fulfills a classic password policy, ended up with about 60 million passwords, length 8 to 12. And then I checked what kind of special characters people use. It turns out They will only use these 14. Those that disappeared, they do not appear one single time in 60 million passwords. Why would I even try to use those when I crack them? It's a waste of time and electricity. But it does get a little bit worse. The majority of passwords use only 2 of these. Exclamation mark and minus sign. Enough for me to just focus on these. That means if we're only using these 2, we now have about this amount of possible choices. It's a 4 followed by 13 digits. Still quite big, but it's 0.6% of our original potential choices. Why look elsewhere? I get a very good result by looking in the yellow little slice there. That means it takes about 10 seconds to crack a password. And it scales a little bit better. 9 characters long, 13 minutes, 12 characters long, 9 years, sorry. Still not something I would attempt, but it does get a little bit worse. As I said, I did a lot of analysis. One of the analysis that I did was looking at how we build passwords, how we structure them, compose them. Just looking what kind of character type appears where. Like these are the 4 most common ones in 60 million passwords. It's done now. I can hear it was spinning down. Anyway, I'll explain the top line. Upper 1, it says. That means that the password starts with 1 and only 1 uppercase character, which is then followed by 2 or more lowercase character, depending on the length of the password, which is then followed by 1 and again only 1 special character, which is followed by 2 or more digits, where 2 and 4 number of digits is the most common. That gives a password like the example where it says password with a capital P, exclamation mark 11. And I think you can understand the other ones a little bit now. The interesting thing to note is that all of these start with uppercase character, and uppercase do not appear anywhere else after that. So why would I even try to crack password that has uppercase character somewhere else? And special character is the same. It only appears once in a password. I do not have to have a rule set that says there could be more than 1 in a password. This covers more than 40% of 60 million passwords. These are your passwords. Given this information and knowledge, it's now feasible to crack 12 character long passwords within a very short period of time. We're talking days, or in worst case, weeks. Normally, you will run a cracking exercise for about 2 weeks. So you have time. We're back at this dance again. It takes 2 to tango, and it takes 2 to use passwords. And it's, of course, still the same people here. It's you versus reality, basically. And reality is the same as it ever was. It hasn't changed. But you guys should have changed a little bit now. And what have you learned? And it's not a question, I'll summarize it for you. Length is the most critical attribute for any password. Everything else is just bonus. All those password policies with like mixing of different characters and having rules, it doesn't actually add to the strength. Length is king. The longer, the better. And you should consider using more of the available characters. So we're looking at the special characters. Use those that disappeared. Then you're not in the clear target when people are cracking your passwords. And it could also be like capital Z. It doesn't appear so many times in password. People don't use capital Z in passwords. Start using it. I'll give you a challenge though. The next time you need to come up with a password, which should be directly after this talk, try to use space character. Most of your mind's just blown there, I saw that. Yes, you can use space character, but it's very, very seldom it's used in real life. So start using it. Some systems don't allow it, but try it. You should also stop using doormat strategies. And by doormat strategies, I mean you're going for a vacation and you don't want your plants to die. So you head over to the neighbor and say, look, we're going to be away for 2 weeks. Could you just please water our plants? And by the way, the key to my house, I'll just stick it under the doormat in front of the main entrance. We don't do that anymore. We know that's poor security. But we keep on doing it with our passwords. We have counters. We have different patterns. Our brains, everyone has the same brain. We can all figure out these doormat strategies. Stop using them. Never reuse passwords. That's a very torn phrase. We all heard it, and we don't do it anymore, right? But I would like to add to that we should not even reuse similar passwords, because that's how your other accounts get cracked. And then there's one universal truth. If a password is easy to remember, it is per definition a weak password. Some of you may disagree with me, but most of the time for normal people, this is the truth. Our brains cannot remember complex passwords. Kind of getting to the end there. I just want to add a disclaimer here. If you forget your password, don't call me to reset it. Call your support, because they're more easily tricked. They can more easily change your password for you. However, if you just happen to be sitting on a Bitcoin wallet with a couple of Bitcoins inside and you forgot your password and you want to share the content, then that's a really interesting challenge. So please give me a bell for that. This quote here is just so we don't forget this machine that's been very, very quiet here for a while. So I'm just going to jump over to this site. And there it was. I'll click result here now. Okay, so we saw there was 27 passwords. It ran for, sorry, that's a little bit over. There it is, 27 minutes it's ran. It cracked 81% of the password, 22 of 27. And these are the ones. And if you see them, shout out. No, but you can keep quiet. So you can see it took 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and so on. And there's 10 seconds on a couple of them in the beginning. And there is some unbroken, 5 of them. Are these better? Trick question. No. Cracking password in 27 minutes is a very, very short period of time. This machine has been optimized to crack as many passwords as possible during a very short period of time. Give it another 20 or 30 minutes, or maybe an hour. It'll crack these as well. So they were just the lucky ones this time around. Okay. That's it. And I know you're going to go back to wherever you're staying tonight, hotels, home, wherever. And you're going to start to watch your favorite TV show. And you're going to think back of what I was saying. And you're going to start to think about one thing. Who else is watching my Netflix account tonight? Thank you.